brain surgery at 10. So not just being 10, but also just kind of like the time of year that it was, because it was 2001. It was right after 9/11.
Yes.
Like a couple months after 9/11. So it was just a rough time in society in general, you know, after the experience of the attacks on the World Trade Center. At that time, I was in, what was I? I was in third grade. I think I want to say I was in third grade. But third grade, I started having problems, which was unusual, because when you go from being a kid who always gets along with everybody and who is, you know, in dance and in cheerleading and, you know, all the sports, and has like a very active, you know, lifestyle and never had any type of issues whatsoever. And then you start having these physical complications that you can't control.
Right.
And you have no clue what's going on with you.
Right.
So it's scary.
Right.
And then you add in the social pressures from, you know, these young kids that you're trying to, you know, form these relationships with. And, you know, you want to come across like you're normal, right? Because you want to fit in.
Right. Exactly.
And you've already got the fact that your parents are divorced, kind of not working against you, but it doesn't fit into that secular lifestyle that people assume as normal.
Right.
So then you're also working with that factor. My mom had just moved us out to Saline County from Pulaski County, which is going from Little Rock to Benton, if most of the people don't know that. So just also, there's that social construct there as well. You're going from somewhere there was a lot of change. So it was really different. And then you throw in, like I said, these accidents that start happening, and you're like, what's going on? Like, why do I keep having these accidents? I'm
like clumsy, just like,
like getting freakish headaches, falling over, throwing up when nobody else was, like getting sick at school. Like I said, the weird headaches, not being able to control my bladder was one of them. Like I started ended up having accidents on myself, like peeing, because I couldn't hold it. And I'd be trying to, you know, tell the teachers, hey, I need to go to the bathroom, I need to go to the bathroom. And I was having to do it so often, the teachers thought that I was making excuses for trying to get out of class. But I'd always been a straight A student. Never had problems with my grades, never had any of that. Well, then I started having memory issues associated after the headaches. And I was forgetting things that, you know, I was having no problems with before. And then I can't remember exactly like when it got to the point where it got as bad as it did. But I do remember the day that the main incident occurred where I blacked out in the middle of PE class. And that was one of the final times that I told the teachers that, you know, something was wrong with me. I was having a bad headache. I remember leaning my head up against the side of this concrete pole in like the little foyer area of school at the elementary school. And it was like the only thing that was keeping my mind off my headache, because that pole was so cold. It was the only thing taking my mind off that pain. And then in that instance, I remember finally feeling just a little bit alleviated. And then that moment is when I blacked out. And the next thing I remember, like the very next thing I remember, because it starts getting spotty, right? So it's almost like, now at this point, you know, I'm a child, so I don't know what this feels like, but as an adult, it feels like when you're blacking out drunk. You're having moments where you're kind of coming to and you're remembering bits and pieces, and then you're blacking out again. Those pieces are when it gets fuzzy. And that's how this was. And so when I remember having my first come to moment, it was when we were going through the front doors at Children's Hospital. And, you know, my mom's a really hysterical person anyway. And my stepdad was there, David, helping her try to get me into the hospital. And I remember being in a wheelchair, and then they were trying to get me up on a bed. And then the next thing I remember was just being pushed through the emergency room doors. And that was when I blacked out again. And then when I came to this time is when I woke up in a hospital bed, and I had, you know, an IV in my arm. I had like, I couldn't move really. When I woke back up, it was like I'd lost a lot of my mobility. I couldn't move the same with my hands or anything. And I woke up, and my great aunt and my great uncle were in the room. And these were people that, you know, I saw on holidays growing up. I didn't see them very regularly. So to see them in this room with me, and I'm like, why are they here? And then as soon as I wake up, I'm starting to realize, okay, well, there's something going on, because I've got stitches in my stomach. and my head is all bandaged up. And I'm like, what the heck? And then this whole team of like nursing students and doctors and like nurses and just every form of medical professional come in the room. And it was very overwhelming, right? Because I had no clue who any of these people were. I just knew my great aunt and uncle that were sitting in the chair next to me. And then they're like, it's so glad to see you awake and all this stuff. And you're just kind of like,
probably terrified because you didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. And then your parents both come in the room. And that's when it gets really confusing because you're like, my parents absolutely hate each other. I've never seen them in a room together like ever. And if it has been, it has never been a pleasant experience. So to see them in a room together and them not yelling at each other, it was like, okay, something's up.
Something serious.
Something serious has happened. Something serious. Because they're getting along. So there's something serious going on. And then that's when they like have the doctor come in and explain to me what happened. And at that point, what he explained, it made sense at the time, but later it ends up being something else, which is kind of weird how that all plays out. But that's just how I guess life happens. But so at first they told me that, you know, it's a condition that usually is caught at birth and that it just so happens I went this long without it being recognizable. But that basically I have a tumor. I have a brain tumor. It's benign. It's the size of a quarter. And they tell this to us while my mom's in a room. And she's like kind of getting hysterical. And she's like, well, why was this never caught before? And this, that, and the other. And, you know, they can't give her really an answer. All they can say is this is what it is that we know caused what happened to happen. And so I'm like, okay, so now what? And they're like, well, we put this device in your body and what it's designed to do is to drain off that spinal fluid, that excess spinal fluid, because I had excess that was causing my brain to swell. So it drains that off down through a tube that connects to that valve of the device they put in my head, and it drains that off into an empty cavity in my stomach. So that worked. And it kept working for a long time. What they tell you, or don't really tell you in those moments of the first time, is how this is going to continue to affect your life moving forward. Because you're constantly going to live in fear. The fact that it may quit working. Most kids, I later found out, have like 8 surgeries a year. I've been very blessed to only have 2 in my lifetime. Whereas some kids have 8 a year. Just to have revisions on different things that can go wrong with the device or the tube or just anything and how their body doesn't respond well to it. So that was always a fear. And then you can't get into a doctor like you can a regular doctor. You've got to make an appointment. It takes 6 months to get in, if not longer. If you do have an emergency, you're stuck going to the emergency room. And you don't know how long it's going to take for the on-call neurosurgeon to get there. So again, you're just in constant fear. And then you're stuck with these high medical bills. Because these are the only ways you can see these doctors.
That's right.
So another fear factor, because you're like, well, I don't even want to go to the doctor because if it's going to be this kind of a process and this much money, what's the point? So I'd quit going to doctors for, like, I did throughout my high school life and all this, you know, while medical stuff was covered. But then once I was on my own on medical, once I turned 18 and had to start going to UAMS, then I was like, well, I'm not going to, what happened when I started going to UAMS is what just made my decision to quit going to the doctor, which was when I started going to UAMS, I started seeing a new doctor, and that happens regularly as they rotate out with their clinicals and this, that, and the other. I had a doctor who was reviewing my records, and he basically was like, we'll call you if anything's wrong. And 8 months later, I end up in the emergency room because I think I'm having a shunt malfunction. And the only thing to do, again, is you have to go to the ER if you think you're having any kind of malfunction or something's going wrong. And we sit in the emergency room for 13 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
Because I eventually called my mom, who's the person you ever want to call in an emergency. No offense. She's just a hysterical person. But I had to, and I felt the need. And so 13 hours of them running every other test known to man before the on-call neurosurgeon comes in for them to give you results of your now CT and your MRI and say, hey, so good news and bad news. At this point, when you've been on that whole roller coaster throughout your life, you're like, let's go with the bad news first.
Yes, just to get it over with.
Get it over with. He's like, your shunt is no longer connected. And in general terms, that means, okay, you're about to have another brain surgery to get this thing working again. For me, his beautiful positive news was that, oh, hey, it wasn't working 8 months ago when you had your scans done at UAMS. I still love going to UMS,
Yes.
so I'm not talking bad about UMS.
Yes.
I love UMS. They're a great hospital. I still donate to them.
Mhm.
They're phenomenal. I'm just saying somewhere there was a lack of communication and that information was never conveyed to me.
I got you.
And he's like, but the good news is your body found a way to work fine on its own
Isn't that something?
without that.
That is a miracle.
That is a miracle.
Yes.
By all means of the term, it is a miracle.
Yes.
Modern science, yes, may have saved me in the beginning, but it didn't continue to keep me alive. God did. Or some other greater power that we don't know about.
Whatever somebody wants to call it.
Whatever you want to
It
believe.
wasn't medical.
It wasn't medical.
It wasn't humans.
It wasn't humans.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Yes, and I still live with a benign brain tumor. I have a device that is pretty much just non-functioning in my body that causes me complications from time to time. You know, if it ever becomes even more of a problem, we'll get to it then. But I know now that I'm obviously here for some reason.
That's right. I believe that 100%.
100%.
There's a reason.
There's a reason that I'm still here. And so I continue to do good things in my life and to try to always do the right thing. And I'm always searching for my purpose. I'm all, like, I know my purpose is for something greater, but I'm always trying to do good works.
That would have helped you get through that better.
I definitely think that if I had started, because I didn't start therapy until like even after college, I definitely think if I would have started therapy sooner, and had even like not even necessarily family therapy, just more, you know, individualized therapy. I think that, I don't know that I would have taken therapy maybe the same way if I were younger, but I definitely think that learning different coping mechanisms, and I wouldn't be who I am.
That's true.
Had I not experienced what I experienced.
That's
so there's that fact too. If it wasn't for my community, I mean, I wouldn't be here.
That's true.
Neither would my cousins.
That's true.
Because of that fact. And, you know, the people who have given to Children's Hospital over the years, or UAMS, or the other institutions, the people who have put in all this funding to these different organizations, especially like UAMS is a cancer institution that they put a lot into now.
That's true.
If we hadn't done these things, then we wouldn't be able to help all these people.
That's true.
I hope one day is once I do start my own business, I want to start being able to give back to these local institutions, and not just medical, but agricultural, because we want to take care of our people. If we want them to stay, if we want them to grow, and we want this place to be a place that people call home, then you have to cultivate it as a home, and you have to bring it together as a community, and you have to invest in that community.
That's true. That's true.
It's about helping people. Even I've had a lot of my gym members who have reached out to me now that I'm back in the the commercial world. It's like, we miss your energy. You know, we miss that. And then I've even had others thank me for help keeping them in the gym, because it got them away from addiction. It got them away from the negative behaviors that they were continuing. And now that they've started that flow of this is my new lifestyle, and my gym is going to be a regular part of it. They have grown into better people and more positive people, and it's had such a ripple effect. And that's what I hope that we can start doing for the rest of our community, is that if we keep incorporating these positive aspects in the world and the people around us, it just becomes a ripple effect of like waves. And then we are lifting up the people around us, because we're constantly providing those ripples. That's true. They're lifting everyone else up.
I agree. And you can't control the world. You can't save the world, but you maybe can help your neighbor or whatever. And that starts with that starts the ripple.
Yes, that starts the ripple.
I appreciate you sharing your story.